This week on the show, we're doing something completely and diametric opposite of what we did last week. Now, last week we talked about bunkering, so this week we're going to talk about longballing. Now, longballing is a science in itself, so let's just cut to the chase and do it. So, what is longballing? Longballing is shooting people at maximum range. Now, in previous shows, we've already determined that maximum range is about 300 feet, give or take a couple. But your maximum effective range for longballing will be about 150 feet to 200 feet. That's about the maximum range that you can actually expect the ball to break on your opponent. So about 150, 200 feet, that's about from where we are now to pretty much the back line of this field. Now, in previous shows, we also talked about how to get more range out of your paintball gun. And that is to, instead of shooting it flat, angle it skyward so that you're lobbing paint in. But you don't always want to hold your gun at a 45-degree angle when you're longballing. Sometimes you're better off only holding it at a slight angle upwards. And the reason for that is depending on how far the ball has to go, how much energy you want the ball to have when it gets there, and what kind of a hole you're shooting through. I'm getting ahead of myself, but hang on. I'm hearing that door slam and it's freaking me out. Everything's slamming and falling.
Haunted.
Most important skill you can learn while longballing is how to track the ball in flight, or how to see the ball as you're arcing it in. Now, I can't sit here and teach you how to do that. The only real way to learn how to do this is practice, practice, practice. So, yeah, once again, I'm telling you to go on the target range and do it there. But there are a couple of things that you can learn how to do. You want to learn the timing between the time you pull the trigger and the ball reaches the point of impact. You also want to learn how to arc the ball to make it go into a specific spot. And the best way to learn how to do this is just to repetitively do it over and over again. Now, I did promise to talk about angling your gun up. Now, when I talked about angling your gun up before, the way you can get maximum range is about 45-degree angle and compared to the horizon. But you don't always want to angle your gun this high when you're longballing. The reason is that, well, a lot of times you're not going to be longballing at extreme range. And a lot of times you're going to find people who are behind cover, and you need to get the ball to go into the small holes behind cover. So the best way to do that is to, instead of angling your gun radically, just only a slight angle. This way it gives you a flatter trajectory, and it makes it easier for you to thread needles. Yeah, I know, I'm going back to stuff we talked about before, but it's all about skill combos. It's not just about one skill, it's about using multiple skills. Another important technique to keep in mind is your actual shooting technique. Now, as we talked about before, it's a point of contact in the back, a point of contact in the front, and your trigger fingers just move. They don't actually move the barrel. Now, even though we talked about it before, the effect is more pronounced when you're longballing, and that is that an inch of travel one way or the other from here can equal anywhere from 50 to 70 feet of arc downrange. And that's not effective shooting, that's basically putting out a cone of paint. And the one thing I found is that people who put out cones of paint, they hit everything but the middle. So keeping that barrel steady, really important. And don't shake your gun like this, even if you're trying to make a point. Now, in addition to good technique, good equipment does help. You can use the junky stuff and it won't actually hinder you, but it won't help you much either. Using a good barrel is a good start. It also helps to use a high quality paint. You don't want to use a paint that has dimples in it, or is out of round, or doesn't really fly straight. Now, most of us are kind of in the same boat of we can't use our own paint when we go to the field, but you know, you make the best with what you got. If you have a choice, don't buy cheap paint. Kind of like what I did, because look at that. And that's a 6.89 barrel. There's something about extreme longballing that needs to be talked about, and that is the wind. A paintball in itself is a very light projectile. It doesn't weigh a heck of a lot. And it loses velocity as it goes down range, and it can get picked up and whipped around by the wind. So you might be trying to shoot the guy in this corner bunker all the way back here, but you might have to actually aim all the way over here. It's all relative, because you have to adjust to the wind, and that's something you've got to do on the fly. Alright, lame joke time, yeah. Y'all want good jokes, you gotta pay for the site. Now, something else to watch for when you're longballing, especially when you're longballing on a woods field or when you're longballing on a speedball field that has trees in it. Watch the top canopy. The reason is that when you're going at extreme range, at an extreme height, odds are you're going to start hitting tree branches on the top of your arc. And that's just wasting your paint. So what I do is I watch the balls in flight from the moment I launch it until it hits the target. Because odds are if I'm longballing somebody, they're not going to move. They're just going to be staying in their back bunker. So watch your balls in flight, make sure that they have a complete path all the way to the bad guy. Now when you're longballing like this, there's a couple different ways to do it. If you're doing suppression longballing, and that is when you're trying to keep a guy down, go ahead, unload the hopper on the guy. But if you're doing precision longballing, and that is trying to sneak one ball through a hole from a long distance away relative to your paintball gun, don't waste your time and don't waste your paint. If you can't get the guy within 3 or 5 shots, change the angle a little bit. Take a step back and slide out of your bunker. Try coming in from a lower angle or a higher angle from this bunker, or go to the left side of your bunker and shoot this way. Whatever way it takes to change up the angle. Just don't sit in one spot and just pound away, because you'll just be wasting your time. Well, actually, I suppose you're not, if you really want to impress people with how many times per second you can pull the trigger. But honestly, how many times per second do you really need to miss me? Now, longballing in itself is an inexact science. I mean, the biggest problem that you're going to have is the paintball that you're shooting, because they don't always go exactly where you aim them. But experience is your best guide. Once you start learning how to do this, you can stick in the back row with the rest of us big old fat guys and give suppression to all those young guys who like to run forward. Yeah. Catch you guys next week. You know, I got through more paint that way.